This morning's sermon is about the right of conscience and the right to express a minority opinion. And I am going to express something that I think might be a minority opinion. I'm sure you'll let me know. I moved here from North Carolina because I missed winter, and I hope there's 6 more weeks, regardless of what the groundhog says. Pete Seeger died January 27, 2014, at the age of 94. He lived a life that was a fine example of the 5th principle of Unitarian Universalism. We affirm and promote the right of conscience for the use of the democratic process within our congregations and society at large. He was a member of the Multicultural Community Church of New York. Seeger was a Unitarian Universalist. He defended the rights of all to vote, but most of all, he exercised his right of conscience, the right to speak out against majority opinion, when the majority was, in his view, unjust. In the July-August 1996 article of the UU World, he is quoted as saying, "I don't mind being controversial. The human race benefits when there is controversy and suffers when there is none." He said that his most Unitarian songs are the words that he put to Old Hundredth, which is commonly known as the doxology. He called his version the unorthodoxology. Okay, you might need to help me with the... All people that on earth do dwell, sing out for peace tween heaven and hell, tween east and west and low and high. Sing peace on earth and sea and sky. Unitarian Universalist congregations are democracies. We raise our own money and vote on how to spend it. While as a person, I enjoy when everyone agrees with me. As a UU minister, I know that my opinion is not the only one to be heard. That is why some Sundays I open up the floor for all to speak after my sermon, and some Sundays I'm not in the pulpit at all. I like democracy. It is the worst form of government except for everything else. It's messy because it allows all voices to be heard. My version of the doxology is based on this 5th principle. And it's about UU meetings, which tend to be long. And like last week's congregational meeting was so incredibly quick. And then I remembered, we took a month recess. And so really that meeting was a month long. My version of the doxology goes, "State your opinion clear and strong. Cherish debates that are prolonged. The meeting never seems to end. Have faith and hope that truth will win." Democracy's strength is in is that the majority opinion rules. Democracy's weakness is that the majority opinion is not always right. And that is why the right of conscience is so important. The voice of the minority needs to be heard. It keeps the majority honest, and it just might change things. Not always in the life of the protester, but the echoes reverberate. In 1846, Thoreau went to jail for not paying his taxes. He was protesting the Mexican-American War. He felt it was wrong to take Mexican land so Americans could expand slavery. He did not stop the war. But slavery ended as a legal thing in the United States 20 years later. Now the 2010 census reveals that Mexicans are reclaiming the land the USA gained in all that war. Texas is 38% Hispanic, New Mexico 46%, Arizona 30%, California 38%, Nevada 27%. These are significant minorities. And the majorities in many of these states have seen the handwriting on the wall, and so they have passed laws to make it harder for minorities to vote. They have tried to restrict the flow of people becoming citizens. They have done everything they can to make sure that white control stays dominant. The Standings on the Side of Love program in the UUA has protested the unjust incarceration and unfair laws in recent years. We stood out in Phoenix outside of a holding cell for immigrants who may have been, their crime may have been something like not paying traffic tickets, and they can be rounded up without due process and placed in tents, 20,000 of them, for years while they're waiting their deportation. The desert nights are cold, and the desert summers are very hot. And that's still going on. Justice is not always served by the majority opinion, but our right of conscience might change the day. In 1872, Unitarian Susan B. Anthony voted illegally. She was a woman and as such was forbidden. When she wasn't arrested, she wrote the officials and said, "I did this, I'm turning myself in." And she was tried and told to pay a fine, which she refused to pay. And she died in 1906 without ever gaining the right to vote. But in her last public speech, she declared, failure is impossible. She declared failure is impossible. In 1920, the 19th Amendment was passed, giving American women the vote. Her right of conscience did not win the day in her lifetime, but it changed this country and is helping to change the world. In the 1960s, UUs Violet Luizzo and James Reeb were killed advocating for the rights of blacks to vote in the South. As a result, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was passed. Last year, the Supreme Court declared that parts of the Voting Rights Act were no longer necessary. By that afternoon, Texas had put a bill into Congress restricting some of the rights to vote in their state. And it has continued across many states in the Union, disenfranchising people, mostly the poor and minorities. Again, UUs stand with the right of conscience. Down in North Carolina, next Saturday, there's been a call by our president of the UUA, Morales, to join the most massive moral rally in the South since Selma in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's the historic Thousands on Jones Street. I've attended several of these in the past. This is the 8th annual, where we get as many people as possible to march in the Capitol and list what things need to be done. In North Carolina, this is a letter from the NAACP, from the ministers of North Carolina, some of my former colleagues or current colleagues, but some people I used to meet with monthly. They write, "Here in North Carolina, we have known no vacation from the struggle for voting rights. And now we find ourselves in the midst of an ugly battle for democracy. As ministers and citizens of North Carolina, we felt compelled to respond to this threat. We have borne witness to a movement across our state that is resisting the immoral and undemocratic actions of our legislature and governor. With many from the congregations we serve, we're taking part in the Moral Mondays, led by Reverend William Barber, president of the North Carolina NAACP. As part of our commitment to this movement, we each decided to engage in civil disobedience, which resulted in our arrest. Why did we go to these Moral Mondays at the State House? We went because we knew that to suppress the vote is to suppress the spirit of a person. We knew that any attempt to erode our democracy is rooted in the desperate history of paralyzing, painful politics that would serve none of us. We know that our own history and the sacrifices made by those before called us to this struggle. We know that democracy is not simply a type of governance, but a spiritual value. We went standing in our tradition, spiritual co-authors of this American dream. While the focus now is on February 8th, we know that this is not just one moment. We hope to form partnerships across the country that will last more than just this day. We are asking for your spiritual support for this movement. Please hold us in your hearts and the prayers of your congregations. May our children's children be proud of how we walked on this earth and who we chose as our spiritual companions. For we know from the generations before us, there is no time to take a vacation from the struggle for justice. I have gone down to North Carolina before, and yelled at the Capitol building. But I do not plan to go this year because there is enough work that needs to be done here in Indiana. Last week I went down to the State House and spoke with my representative and my senator. I gathered in a vigil with other clergy in hopes of preventing HJR 3 from going forward. While other states are legalizing same-sex marriage, ours is trying to add a same-sex marriage ban to the Constitution. It seems like it won't make it to the ballot for this year's election, but the Senate could undo the changes that the House made. I know that many of you have written letters and phone calls and emails, but we can't stop. Because even if it doesn't get on the ballot this coming November, the parts that were stripped out of the bill were the parts that said that any contract similar to same-sex marriage is also banned. And that had a lot of blowback from cities, companies, and universities who offer same-sex benefits to their employees. And they didn't want to make Indiana a poor business climate. So now, as the bill reads, it is purely a civil rights bill about not letting people of the same gender get married. And so perhaps some moderates who were pro-business were happy that that clause was removed, so now they can vote their opinion of justice, that they will put the individual rights of people up for a majority vote. The polls are shifting. It seems that across the country there's rapid change in the opinions of people. But that might not be true for our state. There might be still enough people who believe that gay people should not be allowed to get married. So we fight on. And even if we win HJR 3, or might have a different number next time it comes up, and it never gets on the ballot, gay marriage is still forbidden in this state. And it is also forbidden for ministers to participate in ceremonies that are illegal. So when I do this, it probably will never be enforced, but I could be arrested. I hope some of you would go my bail. And I know in my lifetime, even if I live to be 90, I doubt that the death penalty will be abolished in this country. But who knows? Gay people will be having grandchildren, great-grandchildren getting married. But I'm going to continue to raise my voice in that losing cause. I have never voted for a president who was against the death penalty, because no one can get elected if they say they're against the death penalty. And so how do we keep our spirits up when we're fighting losing causes? The occasional victory does help. You say, I won this one, maybe we can win again. But it needs to be more than that. And a lot of these are political fights. And as political fights, I would have run out of steam long ago. The political is spiritual when we think about the worth and dignity of every human being. This is a faith statement. It's a faith statement that might even take more faith than believing in a God. Because I look at some of the human beings and boy, my sense of their dignity, I need to remind myself, yes, even they deserve love. And if I'm not able to give it to them, I hope someone can. Because maybe they'll stop being such bitter people. But that's where it becomes spiritual. The effort to stop a bill or get a bill passed, the mechanics of community organizing or all that are tools. But the fuel for such things is to come together in groups like this and to do our grief work, to express our anger, maybe even say some stupid things from time to time, never from the pulpit where we would jeopardize our 501c3 status, but definitely at coffee hour, where it's not the official position of the congregation, but a personal expression of wounds that need to be healed. Some of us are directly affected by some of the fights we fight, and others do it out of empathy for our friends. As a straight white male who was raised middle class and got an education and have a household income over the 50th percentile, all I got is empathy. I got nothing to say because I've gotten all the benefits so far of living in this society. But each of us knows somebody. And when we're not on the receiving end of any special rights that we're fighting for, basic human rights are special rights if they're minorities' rights. When you're in the position of the majority, you have a special privilege and obligation to be listened to. Because when a gay person stands up for gay rights, they can get dismissed for being self-serving. When a minority person stands up for the rights of people of color, they can be dismissed as self-serving. When women stand up for their rights, what's the matter with them? Don't they like that pedestal we gave them? So, it is so necessary to be in a community that recognizes the inherent worth and dignity of your humanity, no matter what form it comes in. And when you have positions of strength that may have been unjustly given to you by the majority, take advantage of those strengths to make the rights that you enjoy available for all. And if you have been hurt by the majority, Silence equals death. This is the place where your story can be told. We need to hear painful truths, even if it is about ourselves. Why this congregation might not have as many people of color as it might have, why it might not have as many young people as it might have, why it might not have as many gay and lesbian people as it might have. We're a good community, but we still need to look at how we can get better. And we get that by welcoming the stories and listening to those rights of conscience, those voices of dissent, and surrounding them with love. Love for the healing of individual wounds, and love for a world that so deeply needs it. We can't wait for the world to be perfect in order to love it. We can't wait for people to be perfect in order to love them. The work is now. The time is always now. And every victory we celebrate, the more light we share on this world, we will then be able to see problems that at this day we might not even imagine. And we will face those challenges too. And we will teach our children that they will have work to do long after we are gone. Theodore Parker, in a sermon as quoted by Martin Luther King, said, "The arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice." We might not be able to change the world today, but let us do our best to bend it just a bit. May we bless and be blessed.